Welcome to the Author Corner, our chance to meet the authors you'll want to read. I'm Stephanie, and I'm so delighted today to be joined by author Rony Kessler. He's the author of The Mysterious Animal Soup, a stack of books here, and also very, very active with Rotary, who is getting some of the proceeds from his book. So I'm so thrilled to have him. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Oh, so excited to have you. So tell me a little bit first about, this is kind of a new foray into writing, meaning, you weren't writing novels when you were 16, were you?
No, I was not. Most of the writing I was doing in my career as a CPA and then later, as you mentioned with Rotary, was newsletters.
Okay.
So I was always writing newsletters.
Oh, okay. So newsletters to novels, not bad. They both start with N.
Yes.
So you were a newsletter writer for CPAs. Was that kind of dry?
Oh, actually for our firm.
Okay.
And actually it was not dry. I made it
good.
Yeah, I had a secretary who would read the newsletter and say, excuse me, but I really don't understand this. And I said, thank you. That means I have to rewrite it because I'm not writing for CPAs.
Right.
I'm writing for my clients. And if you don't understand it, maybe they won't. And so the newsletter was really a folksy one so people can understand it. And I try to put in there little cartoons and little stories. It was a 4-pager, and I did it for years and years, and it was well received.
Wow. And it sounds like, way back when you had the original beta reader who was reading your stuff and giving you some feedback.
Exactly.
This is good.
Yes.
So you progressed from your folksy newsletter. Tell me a little bit about your involvement with Rotary.
Well, I've been a Rotarian probably almost 50 years.
Wow.
It started when they invited me to be a speaker about taxes, as a past CPA. And then they invited me to come down, and I found out the works that they do.
Yes.
I always say the difference between Rotary and many other organizations, such as Civic Organization or Chamber of Commerce, is that it's an organization that gives out, that does for others,
right.
not for themselves.
Yes.
As I said, I've been in it for almost 50 years. We have done some wonderful, wonderful things. We have a project that is still now international called The Gift of Life, where we bring in kids and operate on their hearts. And now it's been exported to all the countries where basically we send surgeons overseas to do the work. And that's just one example. But then we do a lot locally too, with the food bank and the schools and all sorts of other organizations.
Right. Now, Rotary International, I don't know if you know offhand how long it's been around, how many millions of dollars they've raised.
Oh, God, it probably is close to $1 trillion. They started in Chicago and probably more than 100 years ago.
Okay.
And the word Rotary came because originally they got together maybe 5 or 6 owners of businesses, and they would meet once a week and would rotate from business to business where they would meet.
Interesting.
And so that's where the word Rotary.
Wondered why they were called that.
Yeah, that's where it came from. And they were doing this, and it expanded, and more people joined this Rotary meetings. And then they decided they want to do something, and it's really funny because the very first project that they did in Chicago was they put a toilet on the street, one of those public toilets. That was their first project. And eventually it transformed from being a business group to being a charitable group. And today, I think there's over 1.2 million Rotarians in almost every country in the world.
Wow. I had no idea.
I personally went on missions to Egypt, to Peru. My wife and I went to Taiwan when they had the 100th anniversary. You can make up, if you're a member of Rotary one club, you're a member of every club. So wherever we go to another state or another country, we make up in the local clubs.
Right.
And that's really fascinating because you meet local people, and they're immediately like brothers and sisters.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
So yeah, so there's a part of it which is very self-satisfying.
Right.
There are all sorts of exchange programs where You can host a high school child and send your high school child to
Oh.
that country for a year. There's also adult exchange programs where Rotarians go to each other's homes in different countries.
Wow.
So there's a lot of good stuff.
Fantastic. Yes, I remember that proceeds from your books are going, and it is so incredibly close to your heart. So thank
Yes.
you, because not everybody really knows. Some of us are sitting here saying, why are they called Rotary?
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah.
See, I thought it had something to do with the first ones were involved with the motor vehicle industry. See,
Yeah.
see what I don't know?
Yeah.
So you're a newsletter writer
Yes.
for your own firm and for Rotary, and then tell us a little bit about the impetus behind your first novel here, The Mysterious Animal Soup. How did this come to life?
Well, the beginning really was my son Jason, who is, he graduated from law school but decided to become a screenwriter. So he went back to school, became a screenwriter, and he started pressuring me to write my story, which I started. I started writing my story, and during COVID, we couldn't go anywhere. And in looking and researching, I found this file which had a bunch of ideas for books that I wanted to write, including the beginning of...
Yeah, wasn't there a napkin or something?
Yes, I should have brought it.
Yes, you should have brought
I have
the
it
napkin.
framed. I was waiting for someone. I'm always early, so I was waiting for somebody at a restaurant, and this idea came to me for a book, The Mysterious Animal Soup. And so I started writing it on a napkin.
How long ago was this?
Oh gosh, probably 40 years ago.
40 years ago.
Maybe 35 years
on a
ago.
napkin.
Yes, on a napkin.
You wrote what became...
And I saved it for some reason.
Oh my gosh.
So I came across it and I went, wow. So I did some more looking, and
Right,
I
right.
actually had a few chapters written
Wow.
and typed out.
You know, not all of us have the first few chapters of a novel like lying in a drawer
Right,
somewhere.
yeah.
Should clean our house more often.
Must
man.
have gotten busy, and
Wow.
so now I was stuck at home, and I got stuck a little bit on my own story, and so I said, well, let me write a little bit about this, and then it just flowed.
All from a napkin. You
Yeah.
know, people say to me all the time who want to write, because they say 90% of the population wants to write a book. But so many of them will say, how do I get ideas? Can you bring us back to that first napkin? Like, how did you think of this? This is an amazing story, which you're going to share a little bit of the background of. But
Well, I'm trying to think what specifically started me on this idea, but I think all of us want to do more, want to do better. And I think that the animal world has always intrigued me. So, for example, why have some animals no memory and others have very good memory?
Right.
Why some have tremendous vision and others don't? And the question is, did they get that because of what they were doing? Did an eagle get better eyesight because it flies up high and it has to see the prey? Or is it flying up high to see the prey because it got such good vision?
Oh.
Which came
yeah,
first?
Which came first. No, I get that.
And then I said, well, why don't we have some of these abilities?
Right, right.
And so that brought about the idea of, what if we could have some of these animals' abilities? And I think that was around the time where they started talking about DNA and genes and manipulating genes. And so I guess this was in the head somehow.
Right.
And the animal soup was born.
And what if we had some of that genetic material
Exactly.
from the animals?
Yeah.
What would that change about us, and how could that be used for positive and for negative?
And that was the whole idea. The whole idea was to put a message in there, which came as I was writing the book, and the message is exactly that
Right.
probably 99% on the negative.
Isn't that the truth with everything? That 99% gets used for the negative.
Yeah. I mean, no matter what happens in the world, you find that it could do a lot of good, and then unfortunately, people also find a use for it, for no good.
Right. So that's our theme behind Mysterious Animal Soup is what if humans were able to use or absorb or be injected with some of the DNA or genetic material of animals, especially those positives.
Right.
Of course, with the positives comes the negatives, but we won't go there.
Well, I mean, you can look at it as a gift.
Right.
But then what are the consequences of the gift?
Exactly.
So that's one of the things that comes out.
That's right.
In the
That's
book.
why your subtitle is "And Rachel's Gifts."
Yeah.
It's gifts, but it's not gifts also. Such a cool concept. And 40 years ago on a napkin, you just thought about that. That's very unbelievable. So now then there was a sequel, The Mystery of the Bedouin Girl and Rachel's Gifts. What happens here?
Well, I think what happens there was a combination of things. One of them is the Bedouin culture. I'm not sure that that's absolutely proper, but I was thinking about the Bedouin culture in a similar way to the American Indians. It's a culture that's ancient. They believe that Abraham, the father of three religions, basically was a Bedouin, and his family were Bedouins. So it goes back, thousands and thousands of years. And many of the Bedouin tribes still live in a similar way, but the countries that they live in are trying to absorb more and more of the areas that they used to, be in, and they're trying to get them to become urbanites, and they build villages for them, which they really don't want to be in.
Right.
And so the story is about, the girl and the mystery of the girl, but it's surrounded with some of the cultural realities. And I think my wish, my hope, is that when teens and tweens who read the book, for whom I sort of directed it, since I have tween and teen grandchildren, I was hoping that they will then study a little bit more about the culture, learn a little bit about the culture. Now, I mean, it plays primarily in Israel. I was born in Israel, so I have some connection there. And it is really an important problem to be solved in Israel because they have a large Bedouin population. And of course, it's a Jewish state, and they are Muslim, and so there could be clashes there in terms of the culture. And I think it goes on in many countries where they call them Aborigines or the local
the indigenous people.
The indigenous people. Their culture is being decimated, but they want to hold on to it.
Right. No, it's a great point. And whether or not someone is a teen or tween or a grown-up, to read and understand even what you just said about the native people of any land, whether it is in Israel, America, Australia, Canada. There are all sorts of places that in the news we hear about these clashes. And as you said, they don't want to simply be put in a village. They used to have, the ability to wander. They're the wandering people in many cases. And that has been taken from them. So to be able to read about, first-hand view of what those people are doing. Tell me a little bit about research. When you're writing about something like DNA, or you're writing about Bedouins, you're obviously a very learned person, but I don't know if you knew all that stuff before you wrote. How do you embark upon a research project like that?
This is the age of the computer.
Thank God for that. So you don't have to go to the big encyclopedia and look it up?
Exactly. Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a lot of information. You type something in, you get a lot of information.
Right.
There are, for example, when it comes to Bedouins, there are a lot of books about it. But without giving away too much of a
Right,
plot, in both books, as I was writing them, and there was not a trigger for the idea for the book, I found out that things that I bring up in the book actually happen. I mean, I don't know how much I'm giving away, but part of the story is a baby basically being taken.
Right, right.
And then I find out that that actually happened.
Wow.
Another theme in there is a young girl being married off to an older man. Well, that's happening right now in Afghanistan
today, yes.
where those girls are being sold to be married to older men. So there are some things in the books which are true. It really is happening today. And so hopefully it makes people think about it, maybe read a little bit more about it, find out a little bit more about it.
There's so much in this world that we just don't know. You know, we know our own little circle. And, you know, we could learn about it through reading, you know, the news, but reading fiction that's true. You know, and that's the thing. Fiction has got so much truth to it. So your stories are fiction. They're enjoyable to read. They're fun. But there's truth in there. And it's important to learn that truth.
Sometimes it's pre-truth. I think about Jules Verne with his books.
That's true.
You know, I'm
Talk about a
sitting
visionary.
here with a watch where I can be called on. I can talk. You know, I mean, that was when I was a young kid. That was fantasy.
I know, but now it's reality.
Yeah.
You know, those people who were visionaries, I always think of the people who created Star Trek, the series. But like you said, Jules Verne, even before that.
Yeah.
They were predicting things that we now take for granted.
Absolutely.
You know, and there are other people now who are predicting what we're going to be using 100 years from now. You know, it's just amazing. Writers are just so inventive. Look at you, all from a napkin. Yeah. So tell me about your writing style. You know, now we had the napkin, we found the napkin. Do you write every day? Do you use a computer? Are you a handwriting person? Do you know where the storyline is going to go? Tell us a little bit about you and your writing.
All right, let me take them one at a time.
Yes.
So when I'm in the writing mood, yes, I write every day.
Do you?
And it was easier during COVID.
Yeah, well, you know, that's true. A lot of books got written during COVID.
We were in Florida, and we were sort of stuck in Florida. We weren't going to come back to New York.
Right.
And so I was writing diligently every day.
Every day, yeah.
The style that I write in is basically I write. Yeah. And I don't know what I'm going to be writing. Yeah. So the story is coming out of my head as I write it.
As you're writing it.
Sometimes I have some ideas that are forward. I might write chapter 22, even though I'm still on chapter 7, because I want to tell a particular story, but it's too soon to tell that story. Right. Sometimes I will write in the forward, you know, a lot of information about what's going to come later. But that's not part of the story,
right?
You know. So, for example, I open up with a Bedouin girl talking about the Bedouin culture, so people have some sense about where we're going with that. But beyond that, I really I'm not a very disciplined writer. So if I don't feel like writing, I don't. Right. So it's not like I don't look at it as a job. I look at it more as something that I enjoy doing. So if comes a day or two and I don't enjoy writing that day, I don't.
So writer's block, you see it as just, it's not a good day to write, I'll write tomorrow.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's writer's block. I think writer's block is much more serious. Writer's block is when you go to a point and you don't know where the story goes from there. So that has happened to me. But I think that if I just don't feel like doing something, you know, at my age, you know, I don't want to force myself to do things I don't want to do.
Hey, I think we should be like that at any age.
Well, sometimes you can't afford to, but I can afford to. So this way it remains fresh.
Right.
Whereas if I force myself and becomes a job, I don't think I would enjoy it. I think it. Now, there is some pressure because my publisher, who is sitting across from me, does give me some
so
deadlines.
I'm gonna get slammed here. I'm gonna change the subject then. That's what I'm gonna do.
My publisher does give me deadlines. So I think the other thing that is very, very hard for me, and I can't talk about other writers,
right,
is rereading, self-editing. I find that very difficult.
Yes.
After 3 or 4 times, I just don't feel like reading it again.
Oh, I've heard that from people before. After a while, they're like, can't read this book anymore. I'm done.
So what I did with the first book, which was the first book really that I wrote,
right,
is I wrote it with my tween granddaughters in mind. I mean, I've altogether 12 grandchildren, but 4 girls that at that time were tweens. And so I said, how would you like to be a tween editor? And I will give you $100.
Oh my goodness, I love this.
If you read the book and you give me feedback.
Right.
And they all read it and they gave me amazing feedback. An example, you use a lot of big words, so people don't know what they mean. Right. So I said, give me a list. And they gave me a list of the words, and I'd either go back and change the word if I felt I could, or I would, in the next sentence, explain the word.
Good, I like that.
Yeah. Then other comments they gave me is, okay, you are bringing up a character, but we don't know what the character looks like.
Oh, okay.
Because I was writing and just,
right.
Oh, Johnny did this and this, and well, what does Johnny look like?
Right.
And how old is he? And and so on. That was very good feedback, and I went back to all the characters
and added
descriptions. That also got me to describe other things, like the when to eat. Well, what did they eat?
Right.
So to some degree, I felt it's fill-in, to make the book longer. But then the feedback that I got is, no, that's important because.
Well, you know what I like about the feedback? If an adult read it, and they might not have giving you the same feedback. An adult would maybe not be concerned with what somebody looked like or what they ate, and that's fine. But if you're hoping that in the future tweens are your readers, then it's so valuable that you got tweens to read it now. Because an adult sitting there saying, I don't care what they eat, but a tween saying, that mattered to me. That mattered to me, and I got to this point, and I was reading it, and I said, I'm bothered by this.
Yeah.
So, you got feedback, and you got feedback from the right age group.
Yes.
Which is so huge. And hey, you're paying people to read books. That in itself is but it's a nice thing for you and your grandchildren to share, never mind the money.
It is, yeah.
That you got to share the book and
then
the
they of course got each of the books.
Yes.
Is signed by me as a little editor, and of course they were mentioned in the book.
And they were mentioned in the book and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
No, but for you as an evolving novelist, that's so valuable for you to be hearing from people who are your target. So now the next book and 30 books from now, that describing what people look like and this and that really matters.
Absolutely.
Which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little something. Do you dream?
Yes.
You do?
I do. I dream a lot.
Really?
I don't always remember the dreams when I wake up.
Of course.
But sometimes I do, and dreams absolutely make no sense whatsoever.
Really?
No sense. I mean, the perfect example is I was driving down in the car, and all of a sudden I was by the river, and it was flooding, and next thing I know, I'm walking in a tunnel. What happened to the car? So dreams are very disconnected. But what I learned, for a while I was very interested in dreams. And what I learned was that it's not what you dream, but how the dream makes you feel. So if the dream, if in the dream you feel danger, then when you wake up, look for something that unsettles you, that maybe you're concerned about. Same thing if maybe something is wonderful. Well, you know, something is making you feel wonderful.
Right, right. Oh, interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
I like that way of interpreting. You know, you name dropped a bunch of different places that you've visited. Sounds
Yes.
like you have been every place. Is there that elusive place that you haven't visited yet that you want to?
No, actually, I'm very into visiting family.
Nice.
And I think I've mentioned it before to you. My family that comes from Austria was very affected by the Holocaust,
Of course.
losing a lot of family members. Well, everybody knows that a lot of people were killed, and everybody knows how terrible it is. But what people don't know is that the Holocaust made families go all over the world to escape. And so the nuclear family today, in many, many instances, is all over. So I have family in England, in France, in Geneva, Switzerland, in Israel, in Panama, of course, in the U.S.,
Right.
and a couple of other countries that I have lost track. You know, Argentina is another one. So to me, I want to see these relatives.
Nice, of course, of
So
course.
whenever I plan a trip,
It's around that.
I try to, you know, get to a country where I can see family.
Now, is there a country you haven't hit yet?
Yeah, I've not been to Argentina,
Okay.
but every other country I've been
With
to
family.
more than once
Great.
to see the family. Yeah, those are first cousins.
Yeah.
And, you know, close family, and it's a shame that we're so far away.
Of course it is. But it gives you an opportunity to travel.
Yes, it does.
And travel is a good thing. And maybe when you finally get to Argentina, it'll inspire a book.
There you go.
Who knows?
Who knows,
You know,
right?
there,
Yeah.
there's plenty more books. You know, I've got a package of 500 napkins at home. So if you want to write,
Oh, thank you. Start on a napkin
you
somewhere.
could start on a
Yeah.
napkin. I mean, I bet if we look back at, you know, John Steinbeck and Ernest Hemingway, you know, a lot of books have started on a
I
napkin.
picked up a napkin over there before.
Did you?
Yeah, we
Did
can
you-
start
did you
on
have a
that.
pen?
Well, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. I'll have to go back and start one out.
You got to start another book. Well, you know, that's why I said so many people say they want to start writing and they don't know how to get started. Well, you know, you got a package of napkins.
Well, I have now at least 2 projects that I'm in the
Okay.
middle of. One is my story.
Right. Okay. That infamous story.
I was in the American Army, stationed in Germany, and that's why I had to stop, because I couldn't let my granddaughters know all the particulars of what happened in the
No, I
Army.
get that. I get that.
And then I think I told you I have a book of poetry that I still work on and I want to bring to you.
Okay.
So that's going to be another project.
Well, we're going to have to get you on here and meet all these other projects. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And The Mysterious Animal Soup and Rachel's Gifts, The Mystery of the Bedouin Girl, grab your copy today.
We're just books up on a shelf. Try to understand this if you can.